following show contains adult content. It's not our intent to offend anyone, but we want to inform you that if you are a child under the age of 18 or get offended easily, this next show may not be for you. The content, opinions, and subject matter of these shows are solely the choice of your show hosts and their guests, and not those of the Entertainment Network or any affiliated stations. Any comments or inquiries should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, and welcome to 50 Shades of Bullshit. I'm your host, Christine Lalonde, and this is the podcast where we uncover the truth about online dating. Now let's begin. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today?
So good.
Those girls are fantastic. It's so nice to be back here with you, and it's nice to have Claire for the first time.
It is. So I'm Christine, and this is 50 Shades of Bullshit, where we talk about modern dating, finding love, finding ourselves. And today, as you can see, Gabby's not with us again. You know, Gabby announced last week that she was pregnant, and Gabby's having a bunch of, pregnant issues, like not feeling good, being exhausted, all that joyful stuff. So she's not with us today, but Janice and Claire are. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
So Janice and Claire are co-hosts of a podcast called X-Files. And so I brought them on today so that we could talk about breakups, breakup questions. How do we get past it? And what do we do? So I want to say that there have been a few times in my life that I've really had a hard time getting past a breakup. Mm-hmm. Having all that emotion and all those feelings, just because somebody breaks up with you or you break up with them, it doesn't mean that they go away. And I did find that there were a few times, I was trying to think about a few times, and I thought, man, there were a few times that it was kind of gut-wrenching. And I wished that I had had somebody help me get through all of that. So that's why Janice and Claire are here, because there are people out there not only to help you find how to properly date or what to do to find the love of your life or things like that, but there are also people out there like these two that help you through how to deal with a breakup, how to get past that pain, how to move on to be a better you. So tell me, guys, first I want to say that X-Files is a weekly podcast about healing broken hearts, building confidence, and moving forward in an empowered way. I love that. So X-Files is spelled E-X, and it's got a hyphen, P-H-I-L-E-S. So I've always wondered what the files part actually meant, the P-H-I-L-E-S.
Well, it means lover. Like a bibliophile is someone who loves books. I think it's Latin, or is it Greek? Mm-hmm. Yes. So we were doing a play on X-Files versus, ex-lovers, the podcast, but without being that explicit with it.
I love that. It's a great name. I think it's really fun, and I listen to your podcast all the time. Janice is always like, so did you hear this one? I'm like, no, I didn't. I gotta go and check it out. So yeah. I did binge a few of them the other day.
That's so sweet. Which one?
You guys are really fun. What was the we had something that we were talking about in our clubhouse, and you were like, you should check this. That's the one.
Settling? Am I settling?
Am I settling?
Yes, because I think we were talking about, and we were debating, Janice and I were debating about, whether our expectations are too high, and is there really any kind of gauge for that? And why would someone ever fucking tell me I shouldn't set my gauge high as I want?
Yes, because Christine, some friends of ours, some colleagues of ours were claiming that too many women these days are setting their expectations too high, and that women need to start lowering the bar. And it was a thought that outraged the two of us.
Yes.
I voiced a few opinions, and it did not settle well with any of them. And I was like, who are you to tell any woman what her expectation or her bar level should be?
Yeah.
Who are you to say whether, she's done a shit ton of work on herself, or that she has qualities that really are quite beautiful for a perfect guy for her or woman for her or whatever?
Mhm.
Who's to tell us where that bar should be?
Yeah.
And it pissed me off.
You made it known, as you often do.
Exactly. And, we're all different. We all want different things. So something that's like way too high of a bar for one person in one particular aspect of their, dream partner may not be much to ask for someone else, like we all are going to have different things we're looking for. And I think we're definitely landing on the side of women should remain picky, quote in air quotes, picky.
And especially if you have gone through breakups, the way that the three of us have, and maybe you want to try and prevent that in the future. And some of that does go with adjusting your criteria and maybe raising the bar a bit so that you don't, continue to fall into the same patterns and repeat yourself.
Yeah. I had a friend, let me think about this, about 6 or 7 years ago. We were hanging out, and how do I say this without sounding really rude?
I don't know.
Just she's not a great beauty. Exceptionally a lot of weight. And she hasn't been in a relationship in a very, very long time. Now, somebody's going to think she's beautiful. Somebody's going to think she's perfect. I don't give a fuck about that. What I gave a shit about was that we were talking about expectations and setting bars. And I said, well, these are the things that I'm looking for in a man. And she said, well, what do you have to bring to the table? And I said, and this is a reason why I brought up her looks and her weight. I'll tell you why. She said, what do you have to bring to the table? And I said, well, I'm an incredible communicator. I give my whole heart and soul to somebody. I'm extremely giving nature. I'm very loving and protective. I have an incredible job and career, and I make good money. I have this, I have that, I have this, and I have that. And I'm naming all this shit. And she says, no, look at you. You're not a fashion model anymore. And you are getting older. And I was like, bitch, you're bigger than me and you're older than me. What? And that pissed me off. And that really kind of put a downfall for our relationship because I was like, why would somebody tell me what do I have to give if it's not beyond looks?
Well, it's such a reflection of probably how she was feeling about herself that those things up first. And sadly, we do hear a lot from X-Files listeners that female X-Files listeners that they are worried that all the men on the dating apps only want to date women in their 20s and 30s. But when you speak to men and when you're on the apps, it's absolutely not the case. Lots of men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s want to date women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, preferably.
Yeah, exactly. So what got you to be breakup coaches? So how did that start for the two of you? Claire?
Well, so speaking for myself, I went through a couple really hard breakups. I did the whole break up a long-term relationship. I was actually leaving my ex-fiance, moving out, that whole thing. And I'm like, what's the best thing I can do? Immediately date someone else and fall like head over heels with them. It obviously ended in a dumpster fire. And that's his code word on the podcast, because that double whammy of doing everything kind of the wrong way really inspired me. Like, hey, I'm on this journey myself. It's really hard. I wish there was someone who could support me in this. So that kind of became towards the tail end of like recovering from those 2 breakups. That became my inspiration to keep going, to like continue doing the right thing, because I'm like, I know it's the right thing because I've been studying this and I want to help people with this eventually and be able to walk the walk, talk the talk. So I have to take care of myself and do it the right way as well.
Yeah.
And so that's for me was my journey. And then Janice, you should share yours and then we can say how we met.
Yeah, I love that.
Mine's a bit, mine's very different. I mean, as all breakups are different, all relationships are different. I first got the idea quite a while ago, probably 10 years ago, or maybe even more, when I was divorced. I was married really young, and it was just a very classic example of, people age and don't grow together. And I was already involved with the life coaching industry. And I was absolutely shattered when we broke up. I never thought we would ever not be together. And I was completely lost. I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know how to, do anything in life really without him. And I just felt like really, lost and really confused. And I started looking around to see if there was anyone who specialized in divorce or breakups. And back then, there wasn't anybody. I ended up hiring a life coach, and it was a fantastic experience. And then the seed was planted that maybe I could eventually someday become a life coach myself and specialize specifically with either heartbreak or divorce. So little seed there. And then not even 2 years later, I met just this amazing, just fascinating, gorgeous man. And we fell in love. I moved to Germany to be with him very quickly, like within months, a few months. And only then to discover that he was an abusive alcoholic, got out of it about a year and a half, 2 years later. Just absolutely shattered. And it was a very severely abusive relationship. And this time I found that nobody really had my back when I left, which was really weird. When I was divorced, everybody was like, yeah, you go, girl. And everybody was totally cheering me on. And this time, like, nobody really wanted to hear about it. Everybody was just like so exhausted with the whole thing. It had been going on for so long. And so then I thought, again, we have to have breakup support for people. And, 5 years later, I went to coaching school and met Claire. A lot happened during those 5 years. Again, just in and out of relationships, trying things, looking for external validation and external support everywhere I went. Created a life of chaos that was completely unmanageable, unfunctional, unsustainable. And it was when I was living in Australia. And so I decided to get my act together once and for all. And I met Claire about a year and a half later or so.
Nice. So what got you guys doing a podcast and really focusing on, I love that you really focus on breakups. I do. I love that, because I think that, like you were saying, Janice, a lot of our friends and family, as much as they love us, don't know how to support us in that. They always say, oh, he was a jerk, or man, that sucks, and I don't understand what happened. Those things don't really help.
Behind you, come on, you got to put it behind you and move on.
Yeah. So I love that your podcast is about breakups and moving on and helping them heal, which is great. So how did you guys decide that you were going to do a podcast?
Well, we're big podcast lovers.
Aren't we? Aren't all of us? I mean, all us women, we're all like way into this.
Podcasts. Perfect. Yeah. I mean, if I want to learn about something, I go into the search bar on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and I look for that topic and see who's talking about this. How can I learn about this subject? Who are the people in the industry? And so, it's something that I did when I was pretty heartbroken, was, go and see if there were breakup podcasts, and we're not the only one. So, go check it out. But so it was like very clear that this was really helpful for me, and also I think would be helpful for the people that we wanted to help. So yeah, I think, podcasts are great because they're such a like private way to like learn about something that, especially with breakups, like there's so much coming in. There's like their family stuff. There's like the way you were raised. There's friendship in there. There's like social stuff. There's science. It's just so much intersects in that one subject, and a lot of those topics are not things that you like publicly talk about that much. And so podcasts seem like the best format for that, especially because we can get on at 8 a.m. and still wear our pajamas and record.
But I had always, ever since I was in high school, I would always wanted to have a radio show also, Christine. And then eventually, morphed the idea into maybe the podcast format would be maybe even just as good, if not, better. I could reach more people. However, because I love the banter and the girl talk, as both of you know, I like my girl talk.
We are all girl talkers.
I thought, well, I want to do this someday, but I always thought I would do it with someone who was a regular co-partner with me.
I love that.
So the really awesome thing is that, Claire and I met in coaching school.
Yes.
And we were the only ones in the entire class of, I don't even know how many people, only ones focusing on breakups. So, we were aware of each other, but
yeah.
And then, the really cool thing is Claire was living in California at the time, and she messaged me because she knew I was in Denver, and she just wanted to know what I thought of living here. And now she lives here. And then and listen, I had promised myself, because I've always been a very spontaneous person that doesn't think things through. And I had promised myself when I moved back to America from Australia that I would stop doing that. And however, when I met Claire, I was just like, we should do a podcast. And we started, not even a month later. And we're 106 episodes in, a year and a half.
That's awesome. Woo!
A year and a half into our partnership, hardly a bump in the road every single Tuesday since we dropped our first episode. And it's, definitely a match made in heaven type situation.
I love that. Well, I went through a divorce, 12 years ago, 11 and a half, 12 years ago. And I did not expect to do that. I, again, like you, Janice, thought, I obviously got married because I believed that it could be forever. And, I'm a romantic at heart, and I, really thought that even though there were problems in the relationship, that we could work them out. That's what human beings do. But I will say that the hardest part for me when I got the divorce is not so much losing him, because it was not a great situation. But I lost all my friends, because our friends were all tied together. They were couples. They were, if they were single people, they were people he knew beforehand, or if they were my girlfriends and I paired them up and set them up with his friends, they now went with his friends. And I lost everyone in my divorce. And that was devastating, because I had no support. And the friends I have now that are real, truly my friends now, were not in my life at that time. I had to start completely over. I had no support. So, boy, do I wish that I could have met you guys sooner, because then that would have fast-tracked it a lot better. And I think I would have gotten a lot healthier sooner. So I really love that there's something like this out there. So let's talk about, what kind of things that you suggest. I do have some questions from listeners. I don't know if you want to start with that. What do you think, guys? You want to start with some questions?
Yeah, I will say just one quick thing before we get started is that a really big part of the X-Files philosophy is, self-care, but also we are really huge no contact advocates. And I'm sure that will come up in the questions, but just as far, because you asked, what do you suggest? We do really think it's like, I will say that's one thing that we absolutely do suggest is limit your contact with this person as much as possible, at least while you're healing.
Well, I will say, I was thinking about that earlier when I kind of mind prep for the show. I always think about, what are some of the things that are important, for moving on. And I saw that one of our questions actually was, how can I maintain a friendship with them? And that pissed me off. I was like, no. But the hard part is if you're in a situation like myself and you are a parent and you have to co-parent with this person, you have to maintain some kind of decency. You have to maintain some form of peace. If not a friendship, which it probably would be better if it was a friendship, but it's not easy. So that's the only caveat that I would say to that question in particular.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. Have you driven a stick shift car before? Do you
I
know
learned
the
to
concept?
drive.
Oh, Christine's bad.
All right. Cool. So here's a metaphor for you. Like if you're in one gear, say you're in third gear, and third gear in this case is married life and being in love with this person, you have to put the clutch down in order to disengage from the engine before you can shift into a new gear, i.e. friendship. So that you're going to be like wrecking your transmission. You're going to be wrecking your heart, your soul. If you just try to like one day, oh, we broke up, next day, let's be friends. It just doesn't work that way. You need time to disengage from the relationship. And for parents, we are not parents ourselves. So we get that there's a lot that you should be making decisions about your own family life in the way that you want to do it. You're the expert in that situation. But we recommend like a modified no contact. So you're not texting each other late at night about emotional things. You are keeping it to business hours unless there's an emergency or something. You're only talking about things that have to do with the kids, and you're not having any discussions that are outside things that need to be done for the family to work. And we really recommend doing that until you feel like you're in the place where you can be friends with this person, where you're like, okay, I'm fully out of gear 3. Now I can enter gear 4, So
that's great.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. I never really thought about that, but you're right. There were times that I had to shift my way of thinking, start healing myself, and then before I can move forward in another capacity with a person. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And it is possible to have very limited contact, even if you co-parent. We actually get this question a lot, and we've heard some nightmare stories, and we've heard some people who are absolutely rocking it in such an impressive way.
Yeah. I think, as Janice knows, I met my person and I'm in a relationship. And what impresses me about him and his situation is that he was married for a really long time and he has 2 grown sons now, but they left the relationship even with whatever situation they had. I'm not going to talk about that, but they left and then switched gears and moved on and have been able to maintain a great relationship, a friendship, which I think is really respectful. And I actually admire that, because if I have entered into dating with guys who have gotten a divorce and they are bitter and mean and they say nasty, nasty things about their exes, and that turns me off. I don't like it. I think if he's calling her a bitch, when's he going to start calling me a bitch?
Yeah, completely. But I think, if you're co-parenting, if you can be friends and everyone still have the family get-togethers and everything, that is nice. You know, I
Yeah.
do. I don't know. It's not for me to say. But I know that it takes both parents who are both committed to making that happen, and
Yes.
that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And sometimes being neutral or just really not ever talking unless it's by email about the kids is the only way that some people can make it work. So I think it's important to say that, you know, same with, you know, should we stay friends? You know, for you, maybe that's the ideal, but for others, that's going to tear you up inside every single time you try and hang out. So it just depends on what both people are capable of.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to hang out with my ex and his wife, but under certain circumstances, it kind of has to be. You know, with Ella's, my youngest daughter's birthday or whatever, and that's fine. We are civil. We're not mean or nasty to each other. I mean, you know, my ex and I can really go at it privately, which I don't like for myself. I tried to disengage from that, and I'm not always successful because it does ramp you back up. I wish I was perfect, but I'm not. But yeah, so, you know, we just want to let people know who are divorced and who do have children that it's not an easy road. And if you need help and guidance along that way, Claire and Janice are there for you. You know, they're not only podcasters, but they are also breakup coaches who could actually help you. So, you know, please do reach out to them regarding that.
Tell you that you have to do things one way or the other sometimes I think it's the pressure to have a certain relationship with your ex that causes more stress than anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, here's another thing too. You don't have to be friends with your ex-husband or ex-wife in order to not shit talk them to people that you're dating. Like, it's a pretty toxic sign. You don't have to be friends to just be decent, you know?
1,000%.
Yeah.
And also just anger like that is bad indication of
I'm like, goodbye. Thanks, but no
thank you.
thanks.
Next.
Yeah, exactly. So here I have a really good question from a listener. They ask, why did my ex move on so quickly? And that's a tough one to take sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. And some guys actually go on to marry the next person, and they're like, God damn it, they didn't even commit to me. So I'd love to hear what your response is to something like this.
Oh, we love this question. Do you want to go first, Claire?
I think it's one of our favorites because, you know, I think it's where it's a good introduction to the ethos and like philosophy behind the X-Files is that does it matter, first of all, and also how can you possibly know? It doesn't mean that they never loved you. It doesn't mean that they're actually in love with this next person. It doesn't mean that they were ready to move on or that that person is better or more fun or hotter or cooler or more interesting than you. It's none of those things. It's just like people do stuff and they might not even know why they're doing it. But chances are it has nothing to do with you. And, you know, kind of leave it at that. If it helps you to be angry, then great. You know, think of something about that makes you angry and use that to help fuel your own like growth in confidence and being like, you know what? I don't need someone who can just cut and run and like immediately get with someone else. That's not my person. I don't want to be with someone who's like that anyway. So now I know. Thank God. So like, you know, but that's not necessarily right. But if that helps you to think that way, then do, you know? And if it helps you to think that there's actually, it's probably to do with their own confidence or their subconscious childhood wounding and like abandonment fears, great. That's cool too. Like it's highly likely, but we'll never know. So pick the answer that helps you move on and write off the answers that don't help you move on, basically.
Yes.
What about you, Janice?
Well, yeah, I mean, 1,000%. I agree with all of that. And I love what you're saying about, writing your own ending and writing your own explanation. That's really useful for a lot of breakup healing. Mm-hmm. And then I guess 2 more things I would say is that if you're going through this particular challenge, it's such an opportunity for, continued growth and continued healing with your breakup. I guess for 2 reasons. First of all, it's a way to accept that you guys are not together anymore and that they can do whatever they want and so can you. And continuing to create this separation in this space and this acceptance that the 2 of you now have separate lives. As much as it hurts, sometimes you have to get through that pain to get to the acceptance stage. And then the second thing I'd say is if this is causing you so much pain, unless you co-parent with the person, I would severely challenge you to ask yourself or to tell me why it is that you even know this.
Yeah.
I think that you should be, if you're in this stage of the breakup, you shouldn't really be monitoring what your ex is doing. And this might be just one more push to get in that direction where you're not looking at their social media, you're not asking about them, you're asking your friends not to relay information to you, and you're not paying attention to how they're living, and you're focusing more on how you're living.
Yeah, that's great. I love that advice. I think that a lot of people have so much access to social media now that it's so easy to just look them up and to keep, following them and stalking them.
But it's also easy not to.
No.
It takes less effort to not do it. I mean, it's so hard for people. I totally understand. But it can be empowering as well. You can choose to do this hard thing.
Yeah. And let's talk.
I'm sorry, Claire.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say, let's talk about why it's so hard for people. It's because it's our brains register a relationship and then the removal of that relationship a lot like pretty addictive drugs. They activate very similar pathways. They use very similar chemicals. What drug addict has had success with I'll just have a look at their social media. I'll just have one beer. I'll just do, a little bit of my drug of choice, even though if you're not reaching out and making contact, if you're looking at their social media, your brain is like, that's a picture of the person. That is the person. I'm being exposed to the person again. Yes. You get that little hit that makes you feel a little better in that moment, but you're continuing to strengthen those pathways that a lot of times would be best to go no contact, go cold turkey and say, hey, I'm staying away from my drug of choice. And that's, doesn't have to be a lifetime thing. So
I do have to say, well, I do have to say that one time my brain was still stuck on somebody. And I was thinking, do I still feel these residual feelings? Am I really still feeling it, or is it just the memory? Okay. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to look one time. I'm going to look at their Facebook and just see where they are and what they're doing. And I'm so glad I did.
Oh, okay.
Because he didn't age well.
And a while later.
Yeah.
Not when you were in the midst of getting over.
Yes. So after my healing, my brain kept going back and thinking, am I still caring about this person, and why? And why do I keep thinking about him? And then I went and looked at his pictures and I saw where he was in life, and I was like, whew, dodged a bullet.
Nice. I love that.
You had kind of brought this kind of question up. We have a question that you kind of touched on it, and I'd like to talk about it more. They said, I can't stop thinking about them, and how will I ever move on? So I think this is a great place to talk about that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say this is just something I'll continue to come back to, but the longer you go without communicating with them and the longer you go not inviting them into your life by the social media and by looking at old text messages and old photos, and the more you continue to create space, I do know the easier it gets. It's absolutely sure. And then, this might also be the stage in your breakup where you can maybe start to do a little bit of processing about how it went down and your anger and your sadness and your disappointment over it. Journaling is really good for this stage, and also starting to think about what you want your future to look like and visioning it without this person is going to help a lot as well.
Yeah. I found that never mind. I lost that thought. I'll come back to it. Claire, let's
I have another tip. So much, can't you tell?
I mean, so yeah, it feels real bad at first. Like, we've all been there. It's awful. It's like, you're inconsolable. Like, how could you possibly ever move on from this person? But it's giving yourself the time to process. But it's not just time alone. You have to be using that time in a productive way, allowing yourself, like, very first step is just like allowing yourself to feel that desperation and like abandonment and just all the feelings that you're going for, and feel really sorry for yourself. That is part of the process. We're not trying to get anyone to skip that part. Sorry, there's nothing we can do about that. But as you are then in less of a panicked space and you're starting to be able to see things more clearly, that's when you can start the processing and start looking at things and being like, yeah, you know what? Like, that moment made me pause at the time, and now it's like, okay, that was a red flag that I ignored. And oh, like, maybe I wasn't really happy, like, going out with my friends with this person. I just thought they were really hot, and so it was, like, cool to have someone there who was like, "Look at him.
Look who I got." Yeah.
Look what I got. But, they, like, weren't actually, like, that fun. And so you start to allow for not just the idea of, like, wow, I thought this was my person. You also let in other ideas of, like, actually they weren't that much fun, or like, actually we didn't intellectually vibe on the same level. You start to allow these other truths in. And I've worked with clients where you continue this process and they're like, yeah, I miss them, but like, I miss the idea of them. Like, I have one client who, the ex texted out of the blue months later, and she was like, ew, like, I don't really want to talk to you, because like, now I'm seeing things clearly. I'm seeing who you were as a full person, not just this person that I built up in my head to be this thing, So
I had the same situation, and she said to me, I've thought so much about this, and I don't think I would want, to have a family with someone who would, humiliate me and belittle me in public, because part of my process with clients is that you actually are creating a physical list of, the various things that went wrong in the relationship, or the times you fought, or the times that you were dissatisfied or disappointed, any random thing that you didn't like about them. And that's the processing that I was talking about, and that Claire is being more specific about, is we're all about mindfulness at X Files, and starting to rewire your thought process and to, accept it for what it was, which is a relationship that wasn't working, so much so that it ended.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, while you guys were talking, I was thinking, I think it would be smart if we stopped thinking about, oh, I miss this or I miss that, going, wait a minute, who was I in this relationship? Was I happy with how I behaved? Did I still pay attention to my friends? Did I ignore everybody? What was my behavior, and did I like it? I did remember the thing that I had forgotten. Is that I know, right? It's brain fog.
Oh my God, I've been there so many times.
It's like, it's so perfect when it happens in the middle of the show. I'm like, yay.
Yeah.
my thought was, one of the pieces of advice that I personally found that works for me, is by taking that person's number, blocking them first so they can no longer contact you, and then deleting the number so you no longer have it. So not just blocking them, but getting rid of the number so you're not tempted to drunk call them at 2:00 in the morning, or, hear a song that you're so sad about. You got to tell them
on their birthday. People will find excuses.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah. So if you're completely removing that, then you don't have that immediate temptation or that immediate situation where you can respond, send them a message. So that was kind of my 2 cents to it.
What about blocking?
Which kind of leads into one of the next questions I have. So if you no longer have their number, they're freaking blocked, so they can't get a hold of you too. The question is I need to tell them how much they hurt me, and how can I do this? And the answer is don't fucking do it.
I know.
Yeah.
Claire and I are just like, just leave it out.
Yeah, just don't. Like, you're not responsible for this person learning anything from the situation. In fact, like, chances are you disagreed about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And very likely they will either not be in a place where they can even hear what you're saying and like think about it clearly, but they're going to disagree with you anyway. And then it's going to be a fight, and you're going to be like, I think you're an avoidant attachment person, and you need to watch this video. And it's like, no, they don't. They're like, they might not click with that idea. And like, when has anyone ever like responded well to being told what they are or why they are the way they are? It's just like, it doesn't really work out well. Like, yeah. So,
well, how about even the thought of, do you really want to be with somebody who could easily walk away, who could take your heart and absolutely crush it and not give a shit? I mean, do you really want to be with somebody who has no regard to how you feel, think, and are? I mean,
and breakups happen for various reasons, but the fact is that it happened, and this person, or either one of you, because sometimes breakups can be really painful when you're the one who leaves, but one of you or both of you has decided not to be there for the other person every single day, which is what we all deserve in a relationship.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. On your list of all the things you want, top of the list should be chooses to be there. And if they don't, then they don't qualify. So
it's not your person.
Yeah.
Right. So here's another question that I love how all these questions kind of lead into the next step and the next stage. It's really quite magical when that happens. How can I prevent this from happening again? Well, you can't prevent yourself from falling in love again. So that's the first thing.
This stuff is magical. Like, there's no rhyme or reason for it. So, but my answer is you cannot stop the situation from happening again where you have been broken up with, or you broke up with someone, and now you have to heal from that. That will very likely happen again in your life. Or best case scenario, you stay together forever, you pass away first. The other option is you still have to get over them eventually. So
that's true.
So not to be like grim about it, but you will likely be in this situation again. But what you're learning today, what you're learning about yourself, about your strength and your power and your ability to overcome things that at first you likely, based on the question from earlier, never thought you would be able to get over. Your ability to do that and look back and be like, wow, I did that, and I like who I am now. I like who I am better than I was back then. Like, I see why that person that I was did all those things, and like, that's great for her, and I don't think she made mistakes, but I am now a better person from this experience. That's our goal. Because now when our clients go into new relationships and they fall in love again, and like maybe their heart gets broken again, they have this experience of being like, I've done it before. This is going to be a good thing in my life eventually. And like, it's kind of like that TikTok sound where it's like, I have no idea what I'm going to do tomorrow. And then it's like, isn't that great? Like, isn't that good? Ready for the next adventure. And so, it can be like a very sad thing. Like, yeah, it's still going to be really hard, but you now have that under your belt and being like, wow, I am like fully capable of getting through this and actually making it a positive thing in my life. So yeah, so it won't happen again in exactly the same way. You'll be better and stronger and more capable of getting through it. So.
And that was awesome. And I guess what I would add is, so yes, you will probably go through a breakup again. So I'm never going to guarantee that. This is just how relationships are. They end, or many of them do. But I think when we get this question, it's often about how can I stop this pattern that I've played out. Sometimes people have said, multiple times, I keep doing the same thing over and over. And so I would say the best
insanity. Isn't that the description of insanity?
It's a quote.
Doing the same thing over and over.
Definition. I won't go on my diatribe about the definition of insanity being.
Yes.
I'm going to stop right now because it's a little pet peeve of mine. But okay, so what I would say is use the time while you're single to really reflect on your previous relationships and try and pinpoint what the pattern is. There's various things that you can do with coaches, relationship inventories, various journaling exercises, and things like that. And then also think long and hard about what it is that you do want, what it is that you don't want, what your boundaries are, what you want, out of a person, needs, wants, and desires. It's kind of a cliche, but it's super important.
It's true.
And then also, in addition to that, take the time to be single and get to know yourself, get to go through all of this, work on yourself, another one of Claire's and my favorite topics, and build up your relationship with yourself to the point that when you do get back out there, you'll be ready for however things turn out. And it perhaps won't be as devastating. And also you might choose more wisely. You might be more aware of your own patterns. You might be more aware of the red flags that you ignored in the past. And additionally, go slow with people so that you can be aware of these things as they're happening.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. We only have like another couple of minutes left. Okay. Tell us how. Well, we know how they can find you guys. We know how they can find your podcast. What's your next episode of your podcast that's coming up?
Oh, so the next Tuesday we'll be dropping the truth about the 5 love languages. So yeah, that'll be a good one.
We've not covered, I don't think we've covered that yet on this show, the love languages. We have talked about attachment styles, but not love languages. So that's great. I suggest everybody come and check that out. I'm going to check that out. I want to hear. I have really grown to learn to talk about the love languages with my partner. Like we talked about that right away, what works for you. This is what works for me. And we just happen to really have the same kind of love languages. The ones that I want and are capable of giving is what he is looking for, and vice versa. So that worked out really well, that we were really compatible in that way. But I think that's exciting, and I'm excited. I hope people come and listen to that.
Yeah, we hope so too. I mean, it's kind of like one of our debunking episodes, which we have a few of these that we've done where we've picked something that's, kind of popular in the, lexicon as far as really, discussions around relationships go. We did do a debunking about attachment styles. And now this is also debunking about the 5 love languages and what it really means and how you can use it as a single person, how you can use it in your daily life, and how you can use it to strengthen your relationships.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to will listen. I hope my listeners listen as well. And, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys for being here today. This was a really good episode. And I have Janice come back all the time. She co-hosts with me and she's been on the show. And Claire, I just love you. You're so great. I love you on your show, but I also really happy to have you here. But I've only got a few seconds left. I want to say thank you both for being here, making my show so good. And hopefully it's helped somebody today. Hopefully it helps them in the future. And really, our goal is to help people grow, help them find themselves. And then in return, if they find their person, then that's great too. So, like I say every week, until next time, we'll be same time, same place. Keep it real.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends, like and follow us on Instagram at 50 Shades of _bullshit and Facebook at 50 Shades of Bullshit. Thanks so much for listening. And